Hey folks, welcome to another Triple T Thursday. For those just joining us, that's Tools, Tips, and Talk, where we'll discuss info for the knife maker. So in today's episode, we're going to start a new series, and this is my ABS, or American Bladesmith Society Journeyman test. So that's what I'm venturing towards. My performance test is going to be in January. So let me explain a bit about that rating. So in the American Bladesmith Society, there's really three rankings. There's apprentice, which is as soon as anybody joins, you're an apprentice. Okay, day one, you're an apprentice. The next level, and you have to be an apprentice for, there's some rules, but generally 3 years. After that, you can apply to be a journeyman. And the journeyman test has two components to it. There's a performance test, and then there's a judging test. So the first part is the performance test. And for that, what you need to do is build a blade that it's got to be, I think, no more than 10-inch blade. There's some parameters to it. But the performance test, you have to cut a 1-inch piece of manila rope in one cut. And this is a free hanging piece of rope, not tied to anything. So a hanging piece of rope, cut it in one slice. Then cut through a 2x4, chop through a 2x4 twice. Then shave your arm with it, or shave with it, so you know it's still sharp. And then take that knife, put it tip down in a vise, and bend your knife 90 degrees. And it cannot snap. I think you're allowed to have a small crack in it, but it cannot snap. It doesn't have to bounce back, but it cannot snap. So that is the test that I'm working towards in January. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a test knife that I can test here in my shop so that I get it all right. So that's what we're going to do today. Well, not all today, but in this series. So we're going to start with some 1080 steel. And this is 3/16 by 1 1/4 1080. And we're going to be making this profile. Okay? Very simple. It's like 14 inches total length. The blade is just a hair under 10 inches. It's very simple, kind of a camp knife. It's a bit of a drop point, but straight back, just because this is kind of the easiest thing to do for the test. The important things for the test, obviously your heat treat and temper have to be perfect. And then it has to be flexible enough to survive the bend test. So let's get to it, folks. You'll see how I'm going to make this knife, and in the next episode, we're going to test it.
This steel is pretty close in dimensions to what I need, and I picked it that way. So I just need to hammer in the tip, and then I'll forge in a bit of the bevels. In the intro, I talked about the 3 levels of the American Bladesmith Society: apprentice, then journeyman. The final one is mastersmith. And that one, it takes you have to be at least a journeyman for 2 years. So maybe in 4 years, I'll try for my master. You may hear me talking while I'm forging here. That's because I've got my son-in-law in the forge making his first knife. So not only am I doing my journeyman smith knife, I'm also demonstrating some forging. Right here you can see me put an arc in the blade, and that's because I'm going to hammer in the bevels. So I first want to curve it downwards, because putting in the bevels is going to force it upwards. Here's where you start to see it straighten out as I hammer in the bevels, and that's exactly what we want. I didn't really have much to do on the grinder. I'm just cleaning up the profile a little bit, putting in that draw point, and then working on the handle a little bit. I wanted to make sure my profile was good, all my lines went horizontal, so I had no kind of inclusions or anything that might mess up the heat treat. Now it's on the surface grinder to get all nice and flat before we put the bevels in.
Here we are so far, folks. It's still just a hair under 3/16, and I haven't done the distal taper yet, so I'm going to put a distal taper in, and then we're going to do almost a full flat grind, almost about, you know, an eighth or something, 3/16 from the top.
As usual, I'm starting with a used belt here just to set that initial bevel, and then I'll put a new Broadbeck incinerator belt on just to put in some nice crisp bevels on this one. This is probably one of the easiest knives you can grind. It would only be easier if it was a sheep's foot or something, but it was pretty easy.
Here's the initial grind. Looks pretty even. That's mostly what I'm concerned about, is just getting it even. It's a pretty long blade and I don't want it to warp. Mind you, that's not the end of the world for this blade, since it's going to get bent pretty good. But I don't want to start out like that. So it's pretty good. I mean, this is just initial grind. I'll probably put a little more of a distal taper on it in the final grind. But yeah. Let's get to the most important part, the heat treat. So the heat treat for this one is going to be very specific. I'm going to follow all of the steps exactly. So we're going to do the normalization at 1575, then we're going to do 2 cycles at 1450, and then we're going to do a subcritical anneal after those 2 steps. And then we're going to do our hardening, and we're actually going to, we say set oven to 1475. I'm actually going to set it a wee bit higher than this. And then we'll check it. We'll check what I'm going to temper it at after I know what the HRC is after this. All right, let's get to it. I almost forgot. I still need some pinholes here, so I'll drill a couple pinholes before I go and heat treat the blade.
I tried to drill the pinholes here. It's just too hard. I'm going to have to end up doing it after the anneal. Here's the first step. It's going in for the normalization at 1575 for 10 minutes. After it comes out, I just let it hang in still air until it cools to black and you can touch it. Now for the first of 2 grain refinement cycles. This time 1450 for 10 minutes. Here I'm just heating up the oil with a piece of mild steel that I've had in the oven. We're targeting around 110, 115 degrees. Time for the final quench. I've had the oven set at 1500 just because by the time it comes out it'll cool a bit into the Parks 50 to get nice and hard. Now I'm just grinding off some decarb so we can check the hardness on the tester.
Okay, I've ground a little more off. We'll see what it's like now. That's better. 64.5. One more. Just a hair past 65. I think we're good. So now that I've tested the blade at 65-ish, I've locked it between some angle iron. I'm going to put it in the oven and temper it at 400 for 2 hours twice. Okay, I've done 2 temper cycles at 400. Now let's check where we are on the hardness. Okay, we're at about right below 61. Let's try one more time just to make sure. Yeah, exactly the same spot. All right, so we're at about 60 and a half, which is a little higher than I wanted, but I think that'll do. Thanks for joining me, folks. The knife so far has turned out perfect. It's perfectly straight. It's exactly where I wanted as far as hardness, maybe a tad higher than I wanted at about 60.7 or something like that. You know, maybe a half point higher than I wanted, but that's totally fine. I could always temper it more if I wanted to and bring it down a little bit, but we'll see. That's the point of doing this test multiple times, to get it exactly where you want it. So next episode, I'm going to do the final grinding on this, and I'll be doing, I'm not going to hand sand this at all. I'll probably be taking it up to like a 400 and then a surface conditioning belt just to make sure there's nothing in it that would affect, you know, that might put a weak spot in it that might crack or anything like that. So, but certainly not going to hand sand it. I will put a really easy handle on it just so that it's easy to chop with. But then we're going to do the test, guys, and that should be fun. So stay tuned. We'll see you on the next one.